Hello, Gwinnett Metro Pastor Steve Parr here, Director of the Gwinnett Metro Baptist Network, and I'm very honored to have today with me my good friend. We worked together for 20 plus years. His name is Tim Smith.
Hey,
Tim served
Steve.
as a consultant for the Northwest Georgia region. He's led Sunday school small group for Georgia for many years and is one of the smartest people I know about groups and discipleship. And Tim's in Cartersville, Georgia. Tim, welcome to our Zoom webinar today.
Thank you, Steve. Good to be with you. And you and I have known each other for a long time, brother.
We have. And I brought Tim in to do this with me because he's knowledgeable about the subject. He's a good friend. And so we're excited to provide this for you, whether you're watching it upon its release or whether you're watching even weeks or months down the road. And we're going to talk about, Tim, I think he's agreed such a relevant subject. We'll probably be able to leave this video up 4 or 5 years. And if our clothes may be out of date, but the subject's going to be relevant from now on, I think, don't you?
Yes, no doubt. This is the hot topic pre-COVID, in COVID, after COVID. This is the number one issue for churches and church leaders.
I agree. Tim, often when I go to events, I will ask the group, I'll say, how many of you have too many leaders? Raise your hand. And you can imagine, Tim, nobody's ever raised their hand.
No.
I've never met a Bible study leader. I've never met a pastor, a staff member said, I've just got too many leaders. Help me shed some of these people. Help me send them somewhere else. We're always seeking leaders. And one of the struggles I see, I believe you might too, with volunteer enlistment, whether you call it leader enlistment, whatever words you use, is that the enlistment issue, that component of it, where do we find them? So in your estimation, why is volunteer enlistment an issue we need to be discussing, whether it's COVID, post-COVID, pre-COVID? Why is it such a relevant issue in your mind?
Well, the thing that we're seeing right now as we come out of or in the middle of this COVID situation, as pastors and church leaders are coming back to this, starting their Sunday school classes, starting their groups, what we're seeing is the return of leaders is only about 30 to 50% of what we had before COVID. I'm not talking about attendance. I'm talking about the leaders themselves, those people that were teaching Sunday school classes, that were leading our small groups. And so they're not coming back in a tsunami, they're coming back in a trickle. And so if a pastor's expecting everybody to be in their place on Sunday morning for Sunday school as a leader, that's just not happening. So they've got to enlist new leaders because not all of the previous leaders are coming back. And also, Steve, BC, okay, that's before COVID. Before COVID, the number one thing that you and I would hear from leaders, pastors and Sunday school directors was, we just don't have enough leaders. So if that was the problem, the big problem that we faced BC before COVID, man, it is 3 times, 10 times as worse today in our churches in having that leadership pipeline or that leadership pool. And so if pastors and Sunday school directors and discipleship pastors don't get this right, they're going to be struggling.
That's interesting. You use those numbers, 30 to 50%, because I've been stating that same thing in terms of attendance, not leaders, but churches right now are having about 50% of their pre-COVID attendance. And if you're having 60 to 70%, you're really not going to get out right now. And we understand a lot of people are at home, they're worshiping, and they're being cautious and guarded. We're not judging people on that. But that's interesting you said that about the volunteers. Pastors may not have connected those dots. And I've got guys calling me right now about restarting their Bible study groups. This is an issue. Well, let me ask you this. How do the number of volunteers that you have in a church, or the lack thereof, affect the health and the growth potential of a church in your mind?
Steve, if a pastor or a Sunday school director does not have a leadership pipeline, if they don't have a leadership pool already in place, they're already behind. Because if they don't have leaders ready to step in, potential leaders ready to step into places of service, they're already behind, because there's always going to be the need for new leaders. whether it be because people move away or there's a tragedy in the family or a change in their vocation. There's always going to be transition in leadership. And so if you don't have a pool, if you don't have a pipeline, if you don't have those leaders ready to step in, you're already behind. And it's going to impact your attendance. And I learned this lesson as a college kid. I was president of BSU at West Georgia, and one of the things that I did when I first went in is I created a leadership organization where we had a freshman council, and we had a ministry team, and we had an administrative or executive council, and I presented that to the campus minister, and he said, "Man," he said, you've got more leaders than we got people coming." I said, "Exactly. If we get more leaders, we'll have more people."
That's right.
Because they're going to bring folks. And so I learned that lesson quick because we did that. We did the freshman council. We did all the ministry teams, and we packed out the BSU every week. And,
Wow.
and I'll just say this, when you think about the leaders that you need one leader for every 5 people that you have enrolled or connected to your Sunday school or groups. You need one leader for at least one leader for every 5. That's a teacher, apprentice teacher, outreach, secretary, all of those identifiable leadership positions. And what happens when you don't have enough leaders is that people fall through the cracks.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It goes undone. And so that's why having those leaders are so very important. It's going to impact your attendance. It's going to impact your ministry. And so it is a sure sign of health or decline.
Right.
Now, Steve, what do you say to a pastor? You've heard it, all the time. Well, I just can't get them to do it. I can't get people to be committed.
Right.
What do you say to a pastor that says, I can't get people to be committed. I can't get them to be leaders?
Well, Tim, I know why you asked that, because you and I hear that frequently from pastors, and respectfully have to respond back, with a couple of things to those pastors. Number one, say, well, that's your job. That's why God has placed you there. Ephesians 4:11-12, God has placed you there to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And part of the equipping is to enlist the people to the equipping. In other words, you can't just happen by osmosis. You've got to, as Jesus did with the apostles, you've got to go out and reach out to them and call them alongside you. So I would say, first of all, that is your responsibility. So don't make excuses. But that's why you're watching this webinar. That's why we're sharing it. Up your game on this and develop your skills. And there is a skill component to the enlistment and development of leaders. And that's why we're doing this. We want to help you to do that. But when you say as a leader, I can't, then you're actually forfeiting your leadership. I think it was John Maxwell said, he who thinks he leadeth and has no one following is only taking a walk. And your responsibility is to rally, inspire, motivate, encourage, to bring people alongside. Just what leaders do is they bring people alongside them. So I would say, Tim, don't use that excuse that I can't. Actually, you can. And that's why God placed you there. So sharpen your skills and utilize those skills, as we're going to give you some tips going through here in order to be better at enlisting volunteers and leaders.
Steve, you and I have known each other a long time. Go back, 36 years. We were ordained on the same Sunday, and our pictures appeared in the Christian Index together.
Before we ever met.
Yeah. It's amazing. So we've known each other a long time, but I love to hear you tell the story about your experience of your first time being enlisted to serve. Tell the folks that story, please.
Yeah, it was a couple of things. One is, it's interesting how, I was enlisted the proper way. I was in a church as a leader, a volunteer. I wasn't in ministry. And I was walking out the door one day, and the pastor said, I need to talk to you. Scared me to death. He said, God's put something on my heart. I said, oh, no, what's God saying to my pastor about me? I said, well, what is it? He wouldn't tell me. He said, I need to come by your house. And brother, he had an appointment quick, trust me, okay? I had him at my house the next night. I said, we need to get together. And he came and he sat with me. And I think we did the small talk, but one of the first things out of his mouth, he said, Steve, I need your help. Now, I didn't know, Tim, what he was about to ask me for. I just knew whatever he said, I was going to do it because my pastor said, I need your help. And it's very personal. He came to my home, said, I need your help. And then when he said, I need your help, he began to describe what it was. And they had an issue then, a vacancy with middle school, Sunday school. A teacher had moved, and I was actually a teacher in a local school. And he really talked me up, said, man, I'm really seeing God working in your life. I'm just been real impressed by that. And man, if you could just come and fill a gap for us for the next few months, it'd be so appreciated. And he said, oh, the way between me and you, Tim, I knew what I was going to do, but I did pray about it. But man, he just does such a good job of just making it very personal. And I want to tell you another quick enlistment story too about youth ministry. I was in a church one night, and I was new at this church, and this before I was in ministry, and there were no teenagers present on a Wednesday night. And as I was going out the door, I said to the pastor, or asked him, where are the teenagers at? To me, well, we don't have any teens on Wednesday. We don't have anything for them. And I said back to him, well, why don't you have a Bible study or something? His response was, when do you want to start it? And so that was very genius there of him too, was, you know, God put it on my heart and he put it right back on me. And so that was a door-side enlistment, which I don't recommend necessarily, but there was a very valid point there. God put it on my heart. It's on me to do it, not to give the pastor the idea, so to speak. And so I learned that lesson there. So that's a key, you know, for me as far as learning the ropes about enlistment. But I want to tell this one quick thing, Tim, about something that happened to me. It's similar to what happened to you with the Baptist Student Union back in the day. In the very first church where I served, the ministry grew, and I was a student pastor. It grew to about 70 or 80, and I hit a wall, and I was stuck there for quite some time. I can't tell you for certain where I learned this, but I did learn that I needed to focus on enlisting leaders. At that time, I only had 3 Sunday school teachers is all I had. I didn't even involve myself with the Sunday school. I did my own thing. But I began to engage myself with enlisting adults to work with students. And as I expanded from 3 to 6 to 9 leaders, you can imagine I began to see our group begin to grow. And here's what I learned over the years, and it's similar to the ratio you said. I learned that for every leader I would enlist and bring alongside me, which means I would train them and spend time with them, our group would grow by about 6, 7, and then you. And Tim, it was uncanny. So when I got to 30 leaders, now you can do 30 times 7. That's what I was having in youth or student Bible study. And you know the story. I don't want to boast about it, but we went into the hundreds of students. The reason was over 14 years, I ended up with literally over 100 leaders working with students. So the enlistment was a key part of that. So I learned about it on that side of people enlisting me, and now I learned the value of enlistment and the way it multiplies from me learning to enlist and bringing people alongside me both. So that was important.
And I think the way you were enlisted, that very first time that you were enlisted made an impact on you and on your ministry to this day.
It did. Because let me just ask you this, just give our audience an example here. You and I know this. The most common method of enlistment is also the most ineffective, and I learned early on the right way to do it. That was helpful. I mean, when I was 22, 23 years of age. So what is the most common method people use to enlist?
Well, the worst thing that we do is that we stand up in front of the church and say, oh, we need a 3rd grade Sunday school teacher, or we need we make a verbal announcement and say, there's a need, or we print it in the bulletin. So we make some type of public, whether it be verbal or in print, there's a need, and anybody who's willing to do it will take you. So that's the worst. But another thing I see is sometimes pastors and Sunday school directors actually lie to their people. They'll say, oh, it's not going to be that hard. All you have to do is this, or they say something, well, you just do what whoever the last one was, whatever. So they lie to get people to serve. Worse, they beg or they guilt, people into doing it. So worst is just a public, announcement, verbal or print. The second is lying to folks and saying, oh, there's nothing to it. and then begging or guilting folks. That's just a horrible method of getting leaders in the church.
So the first thing I want to tell you, pastors and leaders here, there's a wrong way. And let me say this: if you print the bulletin or announce in the pulpit or friend group, you've committed no sin, okay? And you might do that, and every now and then get a leader. But Tim, you and I would say that is a common method, and it should be a secondary method. Would that be right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It needs to. You need to print it. You need to say it, but that cannot be your only way of getting your leaders. You need to make them aware, but you have to have a way of developing those leaders.
All right, Tim, let's get to the meat of this webinar right here. And I may comment on it, but I'm gonna really rely on you to give us kind of a few minutes here on almost a 1, 2, 3, although it doesn't always go in a linear order, but just how do you effectively enlist volunteer leaders? Okay, if you're a pastor, you're a Sunday school teacher, you're a minister of education, discipleship coordinator. Let's talk about effective enlistment, not announcements. You can do that on the side. Surely don't want to be guilting people. But I like what you said too about don't tell people it's going to be easy. Say, hey, I've got something for you that's going to stretch you and you're going to be blessed by it. You can say that, but don't make it sound too easy or that's what you'll get. You'll get somebody that gives you the minimum. So I really like that. So walk through just what you've learned about good, proper enlistment.
All right, so get your pen and your piece of paper, and here's the top 10. Here's 10 things, and yes, they're in progressive order. So
okay.
the first thing, if you need a third grade Sunday school teacher, or you need a middle school boys Sunday school teacher, or somebody to lead the 30 to 50-year-old Sunday, whatever, or you need a greeter, whatever it is, the first thing you need to do is pray. You need to pray. Don't try to figure it out on your own. Don't try to rely on your own strength, but let God lead. So pray and ask God to show you who that person that he wants to serve in that position. And then number 2, just as Steve shared about his pastor, you need to make an appointment. You don't just grab them at the water cooler and say, hey, we've asked 18 people to do this. We can't get nobody to do it. No, you make an appointment. You say, hey, I got something that the Lord's laid on my heart, and I just want to come by and talk with you about it. So go to their home, go to their place of business. If it's someone of the opposite sex, you need to take someone with you. But make an appointment to go and see that person. That adds value to the person. That adds value to the position. So make an appointment. And then provide a list of the responsibilities. Here's what it means. Here's what it means to be a third grade Sunday school teacher. Also provide the expectations, because there are general expectations that are for all age groups, to be a Christian, to be a member of the church, to be faithful. What are the expectations? But here are the list of specific duties for the position that I'm asking you to serve. So provide them that list of duties and expectations. And then number 4, share with them the term of service. You're not asking them to serve until they die or until Jesus comes back. You're probably asking them to serve for a 12-month, a year period. Just like when Steve shared how his pastor came and says, can you help for the next couple months? Give a specific term of service. Number 5, provide them with the essential materials. If you're asking them to teach the third grade class, then you give them the third grade Sunday school materials. If you're asking them to lead the senior adult Sunday school class, you give them the materials. If you're asking them to be an outreach leader, show them the outreach process. So provide them the essential materials for them to do the job that you're asking them to do. Number 6, you need to allow for time of questions. Let them talk to you. Let them ask questions about the position and pull those out of them if you have to. Let them ask questions. Number 7, you need to explain the support system. You know, we're not asking you to do this on your own. We're going to work with you. We're not going to let you just be an island unto yourself. We've got a support system here. We've got regular leadership meetings. We've got other people who are in your positions. We're going to be providing these resources. So you're not just going to be alone in this. So explain to them the support systems that you have in your church. Number 8, you need to ask them to pray and promise that you're going to do the same. Now, you really want to blow a Baptist mind, don't let them say yes or no right then. I know Steve said that when his pastor came, he said no matter what he was going to ask, I was going to do it. Now, I was the same way when I was asked the first time to serve. I was ready to do, and I would say yes to anything, but don't let them say yes. Don't let them say no, because they've not really had time to pray about it. So ask them to pray and promise that you're going to do the same. And number 9, you need to set a time of decision. You know, check back with them in about a week. And so set a time and say, next week, you know, I'm going to get back in touch with you. And then number 10, which is probably the most important, is that you need to train them to use the same process when they enlist. So you've asked them to be the senior adult Sunday school teacher. Well, encourage them to do the same thing that you've done in enlisting them. And again, it adds value to the position and adds value to the person when we do it this way.
Tim, I'm sorry, that's a great list, and I wouldn't add anything to it. That's great. I just want to emphasize number 10 is so important, because you want to get to the point where you're not doing all the enlistment yourself, but you're challenging, for example, if you've got Bible study groups, whether you call it Sunday school, small groups, connect groups, whatever you call those, challenge all of those leaders. Say, I want you to identify and enlist someone this year to be a potential leader in the future, so that instead of waiting till the end of the year, you've got people waiting in line, hopefully. May not, by the way, if you got 9 teachers, they won't all 9 do it. But if 3 of them do, you've got 3 people waiting on you before you even begin enlistment next time around.
Yeah. Steve, any other stories that I love hearing the stories. Do you have any other stories about how you were enlisted or enlistment that has worked well for you, maybe in church?
Well, what I say is this, Tim, and you mentioned the 1-year time frame. That is what we tend to enlist people to do, you know, for 1 year. And you noted my pastor, the first time he enlisted me, that I said earlier, it wasn't for a full year. It was to fulfill a term where someone had left. And so he said, we'll talk about next year. And they did re-enlist me, by the way, and I did serve for another year in that particular position. But one thing that I've done, Tim, through the years is, especially if I'm trying to test the waters with somebody on their leadership ability, their commitment, is instead of enlisting them for a year, I'll enlist them to do something for a weekend. Can you help with this, you know, event this weekend? Or can you bring the ice on Wednesday night? Because they can't bring the ice on Wednesday, they're sure not going to give me a year's worth of anything. So start with those incremental small things. If you want to test the water with somebody, you know, can you do something for the weekend? Can you do something for this event? Can you help out? Another way, I'll give you an example of a way I've enlisted somebody. His name was Jackie, and I knew he had potential, but he'd never taught before. And so when I enlisted Jackie, I said, Jackie, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go into this college ministry class. They've got a teacher already there. His name's Phil. I said, all I want you to do right now is go and sit in there, ask Phil what he needs, and just help him out. And so Jackie and his wife, Kathy, began to go into this college class and just sit in there and observe with these college young adults. And they would just assist Phil on Sunday morning, you know, with the things that he needed. And then after a while, you know, Phil would ask him to maybe share a testimony or say something more verbally with the students. But I said all that to say this to him. Within a year, Jackie wanted his own group. He wanted his own class. That's another way to enlist. Yeah. It's not to put somebody out front, but to enlist somebody to come alongside someone. And we think about the way Jesus did that, you know, and you've seen that as well as I have. It's like Jesus's model was, hey, you watch and I'll do it, you know, and then you watch, but we're going to do this together. And then it was, hey, I'll watch, you do this, and then it was how to do it. He would release them. So kind of a four-pronged process there. So I like the way that your system is very biblical, because one other thing I thought of too, Tim, as you were sharing there, is in Luke 6, the way that Jesus enlisted the apostles. He went and prayed all night, it says, and he didn't pull together the 5,000 and say, hey, by the way, I'm going to start a new group called apostles. And there's a clipboard up front, and the first 12 to come and sign up get to be my apostles. That's not the way he enlisted them. He prayed all night, and then he went to Matthew and said, Matthew, God's put you on my heart. I'm asking you to follow me. And Matthew, man, he was compelled by that way that Jesus enlisted. He prayed about it, and he directly enlisted. So those are just some of the reflections I had and stories also about the enlistment and what I did. But anyway, anything you want to add to that?
No, that's right on target. That's great.
One more thing I want to add, Tim, to get your thoughts on this. I think the reason we struggle sometimes with enlistment is we make it seasonal. You know what I mean? We make it a summertime thing, especially. I call it, when school starts back, I call it the Baptist New Year, because we're relaunching our groups. And have you noted that a lot of churches hold their enlistment until the summer? And you know how summer's like anyway, people are scattered. And now they're scrambling at last second. And that's when they get in the pulpit. We've got to have a middle school boys teacher, the last second. And you're not going to get what you need because they're waiting to the last second. Have you noted churches tend to do seasonal enlistment? And what would you say about the importance of being systematic? And how's it different? How does systematic enlistment differ from seasonal enlistment in your mind?
Yes, Steve. Yes, man alive. I've seen it. It is, most of our churches do have a seasonal approach to their leadership. They think, okay, well, June, while everybody's on vacation or out of town, that's when they start their enlistment process. And then they get to August right before school starts, and they think that's it. And they quit developing any leaders or seeking out any leaders. And that's just wrong, and is a surefire way to kill your church, is to have a seasonal approach. I think, me, Steve, I'm a baseball nut. And I think about the Braves. I'm a Braves fan. And one of the main reasons for their success in my lifetime has been their scouting and their farm system. They just didn't say, well, let's get a team together in the spring, go down to Florida and play a little bit. They're constantly sending people out there to find potential players, whether it be in high school or college. They're constantly scouting. They've got more players in the farm system than they have on the professional team. And their success, and most baseball teams today, is because of scouting and because of the farm system. That's what we need to be thinking as churches. We need to be thinking that way, constantly scouting. I used to joke and tell all of my Sunday school directors that they had to join the choir. And not because they could sing, but because they could sit in the choir loft and note and say, well, there's Tommy down there. I think he'd make a good Sunday school teacher. There's Lucille. I think she'd make a good Sunday school teacher. So they had the best seat to see everybody. You got to think like a scout, constantly finding and discovering those potential leaders. And you've got to be teaching. Yes, you've got to be teaching a constant leadership development course for Sunday school. You can't just do it seasonally. It's got to be 12 months out of the year.
Yeah, and Tim, I think when we think of enlistment, we think of Bible study teachers. That is the core of what we're talking about. It applies to everything you do. A lot of churches have nominating committees, and again, there's no wrong in having a committee, but they tend to be seasonal also. And I want to say to you, if you've got a team, you've got to enlist that team to be a 12-month scouting team, so to speak. Because I'll be honest with you, you honestly can't delegate enlistment. For example, Jesus didn't delegate the enlistment of the other apostles to Simon Peter. He enlisted those 12. Now, he certainly had them enlist people, I'm sure, down the road. But pastor, those core leaders in your church, i.e. Bible study leaders, you've got to take ownership of that. Now, if you're blessed to have a full-time discipleship pastor, he can do some of that. A student pastor can, but you can't delegate too far down the line the enlistment. You've got to take the bull by the horns, and you've got to be scouting and not waiting till summer. But really, right now in September, we've launched our new groups. Right now is when you begin getting ready for 2021. And I mean fall of 2021, 11 and a half months from now. Now's the time you begin, so you're not scrambling at the last second. Tim, I'll ask you one other question real quick as we begin to wrap this up in the next few minutes. Do you correlate the value of training leaders, equipping leaders with enlistment? Is there a correlation between effective enlistment and effective training in a church?
Yes, if they're enlisted effectively, if they are enlisted properly, that is the beginning of good training. If they are enlisted correctly, then they are much more likely to be an effective leader long term than someone who's just said, hey, we need somebody, here's the book, go to room 3. If they're enlisted effectively, that's the beginning of training, if you will.
I agree, Tim. And Tim, I've noticed that churches have a good, again, systematic training of leaders. I'm not going to say they don't struggle with enlistment. We all struggle with it, as we mentioned at the beginning, but they tend to not struggle as much because training enhances your enlistment. And enlistment certainly enhances your training because more people are engaged, whether you're training your deacons, training your Bible study leaders, training your finance team, whatever. Again, Ephesians 4:11-12, we're to equip the saints to do ministry, not just to enlist them and give it to them, but to provide the resources where you're doing it directly or doing it by proxy because you're bringing in, a skilled leader to help with that. Well, Tim, just to wrap this up, you gave a list of 10, steps in enlistment. Let's boil it down to, in your mind now, here's a 3, if you want to give 4 or 5, here's a 3 keys to being effective in enlistment in your church. If you were to boil it down, what are the 3 essentials, would you say?
Number 1, I go back to pray. Matthew 9:38, pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into the field. So pray, you got to pray and get your people praying about new leaders. Number 2, you got to turn your leaders into scouts. You've got to empower those Sunday school teachers, those Sunday school directors, those other people. You've got to empower them to go out and find potential leaders. The third thing is one of the things that Steve mentioned, and that is you've got to organize your adult groups. Don't just have a teacher, have an outreach leader and a fellowship leader and a prayer leader and the class leader for class logistics. They set up the chairs and turn the lights on and get the coffee ready, but have your adult groups organized because that person who serves as a secretary may end up being your 3rd grade Sunday school teacher. And then number 4, get everybody to have an apprentice. Everybody needs to be training somebody to take their place or to take another group. And then number 5, do a leadership development course. I did one several years ago. If they'll email me, I'll send them my copy of my leadership development course for Sunday school leaders. I did that twice a year and had more leaders than I had places to put them, and I was in a growing church. So you need to have a leadership development course. Pray, turn your leaders into scouts. Number 3, organize your groups. Number 4, everybody gets an apprentice, and then you be teaching a leadership development course twice a year. That's it.
That's excellent, Tim. And what I want to say to everybody watching this right now, I want to encourage you to take this webinar and watch it with your staff, or watch it again with your staff and then discuss it, or watch it with your Bible study leaders. You say, I don't know what to do for training. Well, here's the first thing to do. Gather your leaders together or send them this link, ask them to watch it and then interact with them. There's more than one way to skin the cat, so to speak. And if you want to know more about training in general, I'll be glad to send you a link. Tim and I worked together on something called the Spark Conference very recently, where I did a 40-minute session on training and making that systematic. So I'd be glad to pour more into you about that. So Tim Smith's been with me today. This is Dr. Tim Smith, actually, and Tim and I did our D-Min work together. As a matter of fact, we were in a cohort together. So we're dear friends. We've been co-laborers together. We did D-Min work together. And again, we God's really just blessed us in our partnership together. I want to introduce him to our Gwinnett pastors. I know Tim will be glad to consult with you. He's in the Northwest region, has some limitations in terms of the ability to be in your church, but he's always willing to come, to share with you like this via Zoom, perhaps, or online or by email. And by the way, pastors, some of you know this, some of you don't. Some of my background is in these things, education and so forth. So I'm here as an asset and a value to you here as your network director also. So thank you. Tim, would you do this for us? Give us your contact information if somebody wants to follow up with a question or contact you for assistance in any way.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for inviting me. And yes, I'll be glad to talk with pastors, Sunday school directors, any way I can. I know that we've got some folks in your region. Kenneth Acock is one of our regional guys there. Be glad to help. But my contact information, real simple. First initial T, last name Smith, tsmith@gabaptist.org, tsmith@gabaptist.org, or 770-936-5287. That's my number, 770-936-5287. Be glad to talk with pastors and leaders about enlistment. Thank you, Steve, for this opportunity.
You bet. And I will say to our pastors, Gwinnett Metro Baptist Network, love you guys. Thank you so much for viewing this. If you're outside our network, we're glad you saw it and you got Tim's information. If you need to contact me, our pastors know that. Maybe you're getting outside our network. It's Steve, my first name is Steve, at gmba.org, steve@gmba.org. And you'll find all kinds of resources on our website, gwinnettmetro.net, like this video and others. So I hope it's been a blessing to you. And I hope it will encourage you to do a better and more effective job of enlistment. It's so important. And we trust you will. Thank you for joining us today. And both of us look forward to interacting with you down the road. Again, Tim, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll see you soon. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful, blessed day. Take care.